big good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's lovely to see you here. And a big hello to all of our international friends out there as well, and everyone across the UK. It's lovely to have you on board. I do recognise a few names on the contact list that has just popped up. Welcome back. It's great to have you here again with us. So just to start off, my name is Andrea Davis. I am the Regional Training Account Manager at the Civil Service College, and I am joined by our expert trainer, Dr. Roger Prentis. Big good morning to you, Roger. And our guest speaker, Dungeni from the NHS. It's lovely to have you here with us. So as you are all joining, I can see the numbers are going up. Just to let you know, we want to make this as engaging as possible. We want lots of chats, lots of experiences shared, lots of questions, of course. We want to hear from you. Of course, we do have Roger and Jay here to host the session, but we really want to hear from you guys as well. Just to let you know that this session will be recorded. You will get a copy of the slides and the recording probably in the next few days. So you can actually share that with your colleagues, friends, and so on. Just to let you know that this session will last around 1 hour. Please feel free to share your questions throughout. If we don't get to answer them there and then, we will try and keep them towards the end. But again, we want to try and make this as engaging as possible. So please do feel free to share your questions and so on. We want to hear from you. So just to obviously let you know, as you know, this session is Men's Minds Matter Too, experiences and tips shared in conversation, and this is in contribution to International Men's Day, which is on November the 19th, and of course Men's Mental Health Month. And as you can see, we've got the logo of November on there, which I'm pretty sure everyone knows about. So we just want to raise awareness and contribute to those causes. So if we could just go to the next slide, please, Roger, that would be fantastic. So as mentioned, we have our guest speaker here, Jay Dungeni, who is the Deputy Chief Nurse of Guy's and St Thomas's NHS Foundation Trust. Jay is a senior leader in the NHS in acute operational and clinical settings. He has a strong passion for establishing and operationalising good governance frameworks at organisational and system level. Jay is passionate about equality, diversity, inclusion and preparing future leaders through co-designed transformation and innovation. And of course, we have the fantastic Roger, and Dr. Roger Prentis. I did promise I wouldn't embarrass him, but we have worked with Roger over the last few months. Roger is our expert trainer and does deliver a couple of courses for us, including Mastering Male Midlife, which I'll give you some more information about towards the end of the webinar. And he does a lot of stuff around supporting people during menopause and midlife, which we will touch a little bit later on. So, of course, this webinar is a bite-sized version of Mastering Male Midlife, which is just one of the courses that Rogers runs, and he will provide you with some information about that at the very end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to stop chatting and I'm going to pass it over to you, Roger. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you for not being too embarrassing. And thank you, Jay, for joining us. We really appreciate and value having you here. You're an extremely important person to be with us and such a senior person in the NHS. And we really appreciate you sharing your time with us today. So as Andrea said, let's all get involved. So please feel free to ask questions, use the chat function. I'm afraid your mics don't work because of the way this thing works. So please use the chat function. Andrea has very kindly, or maybe foolishly, agreed to bring some of those questions up if they seem particularly hot at the moment. Otherwise, we'll try and deal with as many as we can towards the end in the Q&A session. So to start us off, I'm just going to set the scene very briefly and talk about something about midlife. I saw somebody put in the chat, it's good to have something about men, highlighting men. It is, but what's really important is that we highlight everybody. And, you know, there are lots of movements for different groups and things like that, but I'm a great believer in all for all, hashtag all for all. So we are all become more aware of what's going on with everybody around us. But this morning, we're going to be talking mainly about male midlife, as Andrea said, during International Men's Day week. Then Jay and I will have a chat and we'll talk about some of the things that might go on with men in general and around midlife and the sort of experiences and things that we've come across. I'll leave you with a few very, very brief takeaways at the end, and then what can you do next? And Andrea's already mentioned some of the courses that the college has, and also the courses that I'll be running during next year on male midlife. So this is a great quote. I like this. It's well over 100 years old now. Men grow old because they stop playing, and not conversely. In other words, they don't stop playing because they grow old. They grow old because they stop playing. And I don't know about you, but I see 20 and 30-year-olds around me who actually act very old. And I see 60, 70 and 80-year-olds around me who actually act very young. So I'm a great believer in this, and I would be, wouldn't I? Because I'm getting up towards the back end of it myself. So let's just set the scene. And I stress it's not all about men. We are all, the college, Jay and I, are all very much into the importance of diversity and inclusion and all that sort of stuff. However, that's what we're here for today. So these are some statistics that International Men's Day have put out for this week. And we can see 76% of suicides are men. Now that's really scary. And around midlife, the frequency of male suicide goes up 3 times. 85% of homeless people are men, 70% of homicide victims are men, and it goes on. And there's a load about criminal justice as well. But these are just things to set the scene and why it's important. So if we talk about mental well-being, and we talk about midlife, because as we progress through life, and I regard midlife as being between the years of 40 and 60. Now that's a huge age range, but different people are affected to different degrees at different times in life. Some people sail through midlife with virtually no effects at all. Some people are more adversely affected. And as I've said, some people seem to be middle-aged when they're in their 20s and 30s. Obviously, mental well-being is important to all ages. But around midlife, there's the possible perfect storm. You know, maybe we've got older people around us who are needing extra care, particularly with COVID over the last year and a half, 2 years. Maybe there are children around in our lives that are leaving home, or maybe they're not leaving home and causing stress. Maybe there are relationship issues, maybe there are work issues, a whole load of stuff that can sort of accumulate and weigh down on us if we don't do something about it. So we've probably all heard the term a midlife crisis, and that was coined by a guy called Elliot Jack back in 1965 in an essay he wrote. And of course, the media love things like that, so they jumped all over it, and of course, it became common parlance. But actually, it doesn't need to be a crisis, and it shouldn't be a crisis if we do something about it. We've heard about things like the andropause, the menopause, and so on. If you want to refer to it, I would use the term male midlife, but if you want a technical term, climacteric's a good one. This is coined by Werner back in 1939, and it comes from the Greek. Climacter is a rung on a ladder, so it suggests a gradual process, which in fact is what it is. And there are 3 aspects to male life, if you like, broadly speaking and very crudely speaking. There's the hormonal or endocrine side, there's the physical side, our physical well-being, and there's the mental, psychological well-being. And all of these things, all of our well-being, everything to do with our well-being is meshed together. And if one thing's a bit out of kilter, it can affect the other thing. If your physical well-being isn't quite as good as it could be, then it may affect us mentally, psychologically, and so on and so forth. So it's important we keep things in balance. So let's think about men, and these are obviously going to be generalities because we can do nothing else. Generally speaking, men are poor communicators about sort of personal things, intimate things, their health, their welfare, their feelings. Obviously not entirely true. None of these are entirely true, but as generalities, I'm afraid they are true. As we've already said, men are more vulnerable to suicide. And shockingly, around a third, just under a third, would rather break up with a partner than talk about problems they might be having with their sexual relationships. That's talking to the partner or even talking to a medical professional. And we shouldn't underestimate this. There's some research being done in Scandinavia recently that showed that 65 suicides per month were lowered, got rid of because of the availability of sildenafil, which is the generic form of Viagra over the counter. So we shouldn't underestimate the importance of this. There's still a lot of social pressure for men to conform to some sort of alpha male image. Thank goodness it's changing, but it's not really changing as fast as it might possibly. And there are many things that might, and I stress might, happen in midlife. And if you recognize some of these things, and if you feel that you may have problems, or there's someone around you that may have problems, there's lots of help that you can find out there. There's lots of therapy, CBT and various other therapies. There are lots of self-help groups. There's loads of stuff on the internet. And we can talk to our important people, our social network, our partners, if we have them. It's really important we do that. And we stress that, don't suffer in silence. Get help if you feel you need it. But some of the things that can happen to us as we go through life is we develop the beer belly, the middle-age spread, which is technically called central adiposity, the build-up of fat around our midriff. And of course, that area is where we keep our important organs, and we really don't want fat building up around those, and we don't want it in our arteries and things like that. Things like hair loss, which to some people might seem relatively unimportant, but to others it's very important. It's self-image, and again, central adiposity, the beer belly, that can affect our self-image, and we shouldn't underestimate the importance of self-image. As we go through life and our metabolism changes, we can suffer muscle loss and loss of muscle power, and we can suffer bone loss and loss of bone density. These are all things we can do something about if we want to, and I'll talk very briefly at the end about the sort of things that we can do. And some men, we all know the Victor Meldrew character on TV probably. Some of us get more irritable, we get more anxious, we can even go into depression. There are lots of things that might happen. Don't look for things that aren't there, but just be aware of them in yourself and maybe those people around you. We've all got men around us, whether they're partners, friends, colleagues, relations, or just people we interact with socially. And there, again, is the mention of the 65-month less suicides in Sweden due to sildenafil. So let's have a look at 20th century man. Let's start off by looking at historical man. And I wish it were entirely historical, it's not. Historically, men have had to be macho, stiff upper lip, you're in control, tough, rugged, they don't have problems, they don't cry, they're self-controlled, they're introverted, they're command and control. It's that macho alpha male testosterone-driven image. Thank goodness it's changing, and in the 21st century, men are much more encouraged to be empathetic, to display their emotional intelligence, to be more collaborative and share responsibilities. It's okay for guys to look after themselves. It's all right to use moisturizers on your skin to look after your skin. And by the way, that's a pretty good thing to do. We're allowed to express our feelings. We can admit to problems. We can share problems. We can do something about problems. We can be open, sharing, and caring. So all of these things are changing. And as I say, I'm absolutely delighted that Jay has joined us today with his wealth of experience and knowledge and expertise. And we're just going to have a chat now about the sort of experiences and things that Jay has come across and I've come across. And, we'll just exchange views and ideas and talk about the general stuff. And as we said, pop things in the chat box. Andrea will interrupt us if it's appropriate during that. Otherwise, we'll try and do things during Q&A. So I'll just stop sharing so that you can see us. Maybe that's a good idea or not, I don't know. And then we'll start with the chat.
We have had quite a few comments come through actually just before you get started. Just a few people saying that I do believe sometimes that men don't know they're experiencing mental illnesses, obviously not just men but women. Someone else says, I'm 62 and I feel as if this all started for me in the last 2 years, and I wonder if the pandemic was an exacerbating factor. And again, just a few more people just agreeing with what you're saying just about, age and things like that. Also, is the midlife crisis separate from the male menopause?
Okay, stop, hold. Right. We aren't aware of our mental health always. That's absolutely true. I'm Jay, please chip in, but I do work with people with severe and complex post-traumatic stress. You'd think they'd be aware of it. Often they are, but sometimes they're not, and that's an extreme version of mental health. So a lot of people aren't aware of it. It's just part of life. We just get on with it, stiff upper lip, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, absolutely right. And it applies to all of us. It's not just men, it applies to everyone. And shockingly, to young people now, the amount of stories in the media and that we hear as we're going through our work about young people in their teens and even earlier than that getting depression and things. So male menopause, andropause, if you like, or whatever. Menopause is a very logical word. It comes from the Greek. It was coined by a French physician back in the early 1800s. He was a very forward-thinking guy, de Gardin. It didn't actually catch on until the last century, and definitely so this century. But so menopause comes from two Greek words: men for month, and pausis from cessation or pausing. So if you like, it's a stopping of the monthlies or a stopping of menstrual periods. And for women, that's entirely logical. And women's hormones go through mayhem, if I can put it like that simplistically, as they go through the perimenopause and the menopause and become postmenopausal. Guys don't go through the same changes. We haven't got time to talk about that here. But andropause would mean the cessation of being a man. So definitely not, which is why I would refer to male midlife or climacter, as I said earlier, but male midlife is pretty good. And there was a third one that I've already forgotten, Andrea, I'm sorry.
Sorry, say that again.
There was a third point that you raised that I've forgotten, I'm afraid.
Oh, pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh, well done, pandemic.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something about the pandemic, Jay? I'm talking too much.
Yeah, I will. And mine will be a context around the NHS, the immediate environment for me, where there was so much going on around us. And I think the person that raised it works in the NHS as well. But actually, there was a lot of trauma going on around us, if I could use that term quite loosely, trauma in that. It's a lot of different things that people were experiencing for the first time, and that has an impact on people. And then the whole concept of the number of people that had to self-isolate, stay at home, the removal of what is considered normal pre-pandemic days, being able to go out for a pint, meeting up with friends, meeting up with family, and suddenly for someone like me who lives alone, all I have for company is the TV and the four walls in whatever room I'm in. That certainly has an impact on people. And as Roger has already described, in some of the people that have more the firmer diagnosis around some of the things that we've talked about already will become more and more aware of this. But the rest of us are walking the world without an expert helping us to understand what's going on with us. And as Roger said already, it's quite easy at times just to dismiss it and just say, no, it couldn't be anything. Of course, I've got to be a man. I've got to man up, all of those phrases. And I certainly have a few stories to tell about what the last 18 to 20 months have done to me. And recognizing it has been really, really important because I can then now think about what I can do about it. And I'll save some of that for later on in our chat.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jay. And, just thank you for sharing the experience of the NHS. And of course, many people in the NHS, it's been work as normal. Of course, it's been very much not normal, but they have to go into work and they've had the fear and the stress of the risk of getting COVID. And of course, in the early days, there was the possibility it was much more than it is now. It still can be now, but much more than it is now, that it could be a death sentence if they got it. Thank heavens for the vaccination. And if you haven't had it, go and get it. I've had 3, so go get it. I strongly advise you. And we should still take this very seriously. So extending that to our work, where we work a lot with uniformed people in the police and counter-terrorism, we work a lot with the public sector in county councils, local councils, and of course in the commercial world. There have been different versions of the same thing that Jay said within all of those environments. And, we ourselves had to shift from face-to-face stuff almost exclusively to online stuff almost exclusively. And it has an impact on all of us. It has to. Some of us are more resilient than others. Some of us think we're more resilient than others, but actually it still affects us. And it's really important that we recognize this in ourselves and, of course, others around it. And I always talk about our normal. We know our normal. We know the normal for people around us, how they react to events, how they react to people, how they react to things. And if we see a change, that's a good prompt for us to have a nice quiet chat with them and say, how's things going? Are things all right? Is there anything I can help you with? Is there something going on? And that's the way to do it. So, Jay, tell us more about some of your stories, please.
So, needless to say, the pandemic features in this. So much of 2020, I think I've got my years right. You've really got to think about the years because we've almost lost a whole year without realizing it's gone by. working in a district general hospital in northwest London. I was in the command and control room as we were dealing with this unknown, which is now more familiarly known as COVID or COVID-19 or the corona. And I succumbed to it. I was down for 3.5 weeks. And I have to say that I'm not frontline in any sense. I know the job title might suggest that, but I spend a lot of my time in offices and in meeting rooms. But when, all decks, all hands on deck, so to speak, I had to get involved. And I succumbed to it, and I was down for 3.5 weeks with it, really ill, not knowing whether I was going to see the light of day the following day. Really, really terrible, terrible time in my life. I wouldn't wish it on anyone else. And I recovered. Yay, great. Then after that, I had to endure a period of recovery, which was quite difficult. As I said, lived alone, had to work from home because getting up to near normal self took me about 2 months. And in that time I worked from home, boy, did I suddenly realize that actually being alone is terrible. Not lonely, but being alone, because the conversations that I have at work, the conversations that I have with people, it might be the 1 hour a day, was really, really good for me. But I never realized that, and probably took it for granted. And then when I suddenly did have access to it, I felt a big change in me, and I was quite breathless. And one thing that I've got to say probably saved me from all of that, because I went through a period I had never envisaged I'd ever go through. I'm a tennis player. I happen to be a tennis coach as well. And to build my fitness up, I started going for walks, which, was good for the outdoors. But as I picked up more coaching and more tennis, I enjoyed the conversations in a way that I've never enjoyed before. So there's a starting point for me, in that tennis was a lifesaver for me. And I ended up working in central London, something that I never thought I would ever do, because of how much tennis I played in that time. And I suddenly felt I had more energy, I had more time for people and the like. So how's that for a start, Roger?
Absolutely brilliant. And there's been some chat in the chat about exercise and the importance of exercise. And of course, different things will be important for different people. And what's important, number one, is to do something, and number two is to do what's good for you. If you like going to a gym, go to a gym. And if you don't, because if you're trying to force yourself to do something that you don't like, you're much less likely to do it. But if you enjoy going out for a walk in the fresh air, or even in the polluted air of London, then that's good. I'm like that. I love going out for a walk. And sometimes I have to push myself because the weather may not be so good, but it clears your head. It gives you a chance to think. It calms you down. It refocuses your eyes, because sitting in front of a screen all the time, you're kind of focused at, whatever it is, 30, 40 centimeters, which is a strain on the eyes as well. And of course, we go to bed and our minds are exhausted, but our bodies say, hey, what's going on? I haven't done anything. I've just sat down all day. So going out for a nice brisk walk is good for us in so many ways, and it'll help us get tired. There've been some talk about losing friends, losing family in the chat as well. And of course, this is something that's probably impacted almost all of us. I've lost some close friends to COVID. As a result of COVID, they had some of them had underlying health issues of which we were aware. Some had ones that we weren't aware. And as Jay said, recovery from COVID, particularly long COVID, which we still don't really understand, is a really, really difficult thing. I've got another friend who was double vaccinated, got COVID, and quite frankly, if he hadn't been double vaccinated, he would not be with us now, and his recovery is terrible. So there are lots of stuff going on. So Jay, in terms of the NHS, what's been the main impact on your colleagues around the NHS? We hear that in the news we're kind of being drip fed about the stress that the NHS is under at the moment, and I strongly suspect that this is underplaying it hugely, because from where I'm sitting, going on underground trains, going on trains, this is my view. You can shoot me down in flames, that there aren't enough people sufficiently worried about this who are even wearing masks out of respect for other people. It doesn't matter what you feel about yourself, wear it out of respect for others. We're not through this. COVID's going to be with us forever now, like flu. but we've got to get over the pandemic stage to get into its normal stage. What do you think, Jay?
So I couldn't agree with you more. Like you've said, there's so many different views out there. But the one thing that I would say from inside the NHS, we have not seen a step change. We're still seeing high level of activity associated with COVID-19. We might be seeing less deaths because of the successes of the vaccination program and all of the other preventative measures that have been taken. But we know that outside of the territorial boundaries of the buildings and locations where we provide services from, it's almost as though this is last year's problem. It isn't. We're still seeing people coming into the hospital sick with COVID. Because of all the screening that we're doing, trying to keep the environment safe, we are picking up a lot of COVID-19 that people didn't know they had. And it's okay for those people that are asymptomatic carriers, as it were, because they carry on with life. It's when they come into contact with the vulnerable that wouldn't have robust systems to protect themselves because of whatever else might be going on within them. Now, really, really important that I make this point on a personal level, because I do not speak for the NHS, but I share my experiences, is that mental health is something just as important as physical health. And we know that people that suffer with mental health may have physical manifestations. Really, really important that we understand that. At my lowest, and maybe I never engaged with the services at the time, but at my lowest after recovering with COVID, there was a lot of psychological interventions that I employed on a personal level. And I'm wondering how many Jays are out there that probably wouldn't have been able to deploy that because of the very little knowledge I have in the area. But on a more serious level within the NHS, well-being is suddenly become the next phrase that is used in every conversation. Partly because, and I've seen some comments in the chat, we've got family that work in A&E and in critical care in so many different areas. It's been constant for people, and they've not had what we'll probably describe as a lull, which we would see and associate with different seasons. And winter is upon us. And for the first time in a 2-year period, people are out there in the public experiencing winter without wearing masks. There's another problem coming there. All of the winter associated illnesses and ailments means that it continues to become a busy period. And what we are working with now is clinical psychologists, not just for the patients, but more for the staff, in bringing them together to say, let's talk about what this means for you. And we're learning a lot from that, because where we thought we were valuing our staff, we were only just touching the surface. There's a lot more that can be done. And a lot of organizations, and certainly at national level, there's recognition that more needs to be done in this space.
I think mental well-being is important for absolutely everyone. I mean, women going through midlife, the menopause, often misdiagnosed as having mental health conditions due to hormonal fluctuations, which is scary and terrible. And we are, one of our campaigns is to do something about it. But with regard to this mental well-being and the stress and the strains that we're being put under, particularly with COVID on top of it, and sadly, one of our most popular courses that we run at the moment is called Overcoming Overwhelm. And we've had one client has run 9 of these courses with 20 people on each one already. So we can see the effects that this is having. And it's back to what someone said earlier. Sometimes we're aware of it, sometimes we're not aware of it. And it's really important that we do raise our awareness of this within ourselves and others around us. And one of the challenges with men, I always say women are much more sensible when it comes to this. Again, a generality clearly, but one of the challenges with men, to which I've already referred earlier, is we tend to bury our head in the sand a bit. We tend to think, oh, it's not, it'll go away. It's not really important. Everyone else is suffering this. I won't do anything about it. I don't want to cause any trouble. I don't want to blah, 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 blah. And we don't do anything about it. I put my hand up. I'm guilty of that as well. And still am, despite the fact that I preach the opposite. So what do you think we can do about this, Jay? How can we get guys to? And one thing I strongly believe is we enlist women in this this quest as well, which is why I'm all for this all for all hashtag, all for all. We should all be aware and support everybody. So men supporting women, women supporting men, everyone supporting everyone. It doesn't matter who, what, where, or when you are. But what can we do to get men more involved in this and become more aware and empower themselves?
Yeah, I think very good question there, Roger. I think that journey always starts with self. If I can think of it this way, I think we've got about 108, 107 people, if my counting is right, okay, or
Yep.
maybe even more on this in this session. If I can say something that would touch 10 people, and those 10 people go and find another 10 people, before we know it, the curve, the distribution curve becomes quite exponential, really, in how many people we change. Here's my personal view on this, in that being a shy introvert, believe me, I am. It's taken me a long time to really grasp the whole idea of I might need help from someone else, because I've always found solutions that worked for me. I hate the idea of, and always have, of someone else telling me what to do. And actually, what we need to do is create platforms where people can come together, and not make the focus being about we're going to tell you what to do, but get people through appreciative inquiry, to discuss what works for them. There's park runs, there's joining a club somewhere else, but within that, we just need to start thinking about and recognizing what's going on within ourselves. So within the NHS, Roger, is something called supervision, clinical supervision, something that was always used probably mainly in the more traumatic side of delivery of services, whether it's in safeguarding, and all you see is torment and turmoil all the time, all of those things that would put your senses on a heightened level, probably not in the not so positive space, if I was to say. So it's something that's recognized that we do need to wrap around that care, where we can all have a bit of a debrief at the end of a day, week, and things like that. But imagine what everyone is going through at the present moment, be it because of the pandemic or anything else. Where do you get your support from? Quite interesting that I'm having more conversations with my dad, who's more of an introvert than I will ever be, about mental health. I'm able to talk to him about when did he last have his prostate screen, for instance. Whereas before, when I used to try and do that, I used to get told, no, I'm not your patient, go away. So I've had to find ways of getting around that. And one of the things that have certainly helped me was my near-death experience, I suppose. And I'm now able to expose myself in a vulnerable way in the senior position that I'm in. And I'm able to say to people, I really don't know what to do when the pressure is on. And then have people telling me that this is what works for me. Working in central London at the moment, I have less time to play tennis, but actually what I do know, physical activity helps. I've got a building that's got 20 floors plus that I can use. And it takes me however minutes it will to get up to the 28th floor. But that's enough physical exercise a day for me. And I can tell other people that that's what I'm doing. There's walking clubs that you can take at lunchtime and things like that, but encourage people just to normalize and probably make it a bit informal to talk about one's vulnerabilities, and not make it into a therapy session, because that is the one thing that would make me run a mile if someone said, right, I'm prescribing therapy for you, because there's almost an acknowledgement that actually something isn't right with me, and that doesn't work with my alpha male syndrome.
And also, interestingly, Jay, the therapy profession has been pulled up a bit, because therapists tend to talk in terms that therapists talk in. And it's been shown very strongly that men generally, again, generalities, don't respond well to these sort of touchy-feely, oh, how do you feel? How's this impacting your life? That's not how they interact with therapists well. So therapists themselves are having to rethink how they address these issues with men. And I'm totally with you. Don't tell me what to do, because I'll do the opposite. However stupid it is, I'll probably do the opposite, even if what you're telling me is good. You mentioned routine checks like your PSA, your prostate check, and your bowel cancer check. When you get these, when you reach certain ages, certain checks are triggered. Like I think over 60, you get a bowel cancer kit comes through the post, or you have to request one. Do it. do it. I had a hip replacement operation a couple of years ago, and in my day of recovery in the ward, another guy came in. Long story, he'd had a hip, he'd broken his hip in Spain. They'd done a hip replacement. They hadn't done it properly. He had to wait a year for it to heal so that he could have it redone here. And during that year of healing, waiting for having his second hip replacement in the same hip within a year, he got bowel cancer. And I said to him, didn't you notice anything going on? Oh, well, yeah, I noticed a bit of blood in my poo, and there were a few other things going on. Didn't you do anything about it? And he said, well, no, I didn't think it was really important. And the prognosis, your future life expectancy, if you catch it early, however horrid it is, if you catch it early, it's so much better. Prostate cancer, if you catch it early, the prognosis 5-year survival, if you catch it really early, is above 95%. If you catch it late, it goes to less than 1/3, more like a quarter. Now, it may be difficult, it may be embarrassing. Get over yourself. This is me speaking personally, because it's much more embarrassing to die of prostate cancer and a lot more unpleasant than just have a simple test that, by the way, no one needs to know you're having done anyway. So just do these things. And we talked about the frequency. You talked about how many J's are there out there. And you know what, I think, I have no idea what the percentage in the population, but as we move around, I'm a kind of an advisor, if you like, to a men's self-help group. It's a bit like Men's Sheds, but slightly different. And there are lots of these organizations out there, and the number of people there that this group helps, and I know for a fact they've saved the lives of several men who are contemplating suicide because of what they do. And that isn't a therapy session. It's just sharing things, sharing experiences in a safe space where you can say anything, whatever, and you just talk to other guys. And we shouldn't underestimate the value of what we call social capital, our networks around us. That's really, really important. So, Jay, we're sort of coming towards the end of our chat, but tell us about a little bit more about the NHS. I'm sure a lot of people would love to hear about what's going on and the things that you're going through in the NHS and the valiant work that you and all your colleagues are doing there to support the population.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to do it justice in the few minutes that we have left, but here's an attempt anyway. For those of you that don't work in the NHS or are not involved in any of the care, health and social care side of things, I would implore you just to think of your world in this way. Imagine the busiest period, right? Whether it's month end or year end, if you're in finance, if you're in business planning or in marketing, and it's about trying to make sure that you get commissioned in a way that would make your business profitable. All of those things that will determine what the likelihood of survival is in the space of business. It's a constant for us. We're constantly in that space. For us senior leaders, where we would have had a slightly different focus, we are now constantly so worried about the biggest risk that's facing us. And trust me, it is not the pandemic. It is how broken and how tired people are. Because if we do not address this, and it's one of those joint and several challenges that we face, but there is always that look in our direction to say, what are you doing about it? I've never felt so much pressure in my life. The pressure of coming up with a workforce plan or a business plan and the like I can deal with almost with my eyes closed because I know what to do. I'm now faced with a workforce that's saying, I'm tired, even more tired than I've ever been. And it's constant. How do I do this? And, like love it or loathe it, put it that way. There is something that we have to do as part of the NHS, which is continue delivering against the targets that are set for us. So the acute phase, which is about dealing with the sick during the pandemic, is kind of like almost, dying down. Yeah, absolutely understand that. But then there's everyone else who didn't access services in that time. You're talking about your hip replacement. It was an elective procedure, and there are loads of people out there that had to wait because hospitals were not safe enough for us to continue providing this type of care, and community centres were not able to provide all of the pre-care that was required. GPs struggling, dentists struggling because they have to work within an environment that is even more regulated than what it was, all in the tune of safety. Who is on the receiving end of all of this? Patients have to wait longer, right? And then when we see the patients, at times the disease progression is so bad that all we have to do is just look over our shoulders and just say, what happened in the last 18 months? Had I been in to do something about this in the last 18 months, we'll be seeing less of the extremes of disease and conditions and the like. Even on the chronic side of things, people with diabetes that didn't have access to screening, that didn't have access to routine monitoring, because the world is kind of like almost lagged behind because we've skipped a few years, probably a decade and a half, in terms of the automation and AI that we need to keep up with the deterioration that's happened just in the last 18 months. We talk about equality, diversity, and inclusion. The health inequalities out there. As we start to research some of this, doing things like genomics, understanding what the predisposition is to developing severe chronic disease, it's something that we needed to have in place about 10 years ago, if you'd ask me. There's so much more that we need to do now, and actually at a time where people are probably deciding that they've done their stint. So we're seeing people that are deciding to retire early, and I've got nothing against them. But what we now need to do is to accelerate our efforts and the innovation around how we entice people to come into the health and social care industry, either as support workers, and also moving away from the traditionalist approach of their doctors, their nurses, and this is how they need to work. And actually, we need to be wrapping around all of those traditional disciplines with here's the additional help that you might need so that you can concentrate on the higher level interventions that only you can do, being on a professional register in order to carry out that task. So there's a lot going on in that space, but the biggest challenge that everyone is facing is recruiting in time to keep up with the numbers, but also retaining people at the same time, so that turnover, we're not at a standstill. We need to be recruiting more to help us in this space. And there's a whole lot of other things, UK exit, and a whole lot of things, that wouldn't be unique to the NHS from a supply chain point of view. I go to my local supermarket and I can't find my my guilty pleasure all the time, because you know what, there's a sign up there that says, we haven't been able to get the delivery in time. So there's a version of that in every walk of life. And I think the NHS is, for me, something that I look at and think we've got it good in so many ways, because we have been put up there as the key workers of the key workers, if you see what I mean. But actually, there's something in me that says, let's look beyond the NHS. Let's normalize this and not make it just an NHS issue, because it's right across the board. And for as long as the media and everything else that we produce doesn't focus on everyone else, everyone will think that it's an NHS problem.
Of course, yeah. And of course, in some ways, the NHS underpins the whole of our life, because when we're fit and healthy, we kind of don't really think so much about the NHS, to be honest. But when we get poorly in some way, or if we get very poorly, then the first thing we think about is the NHS. And it's there to help us, and we should also do our bit to help it. So the talk that there is around about being respectful to other people, looking after yourself so that you don't get COVID and then you don't become a burden on the NHS for other people. We didn't talk about comorbidity. You referred to it, you alluded to it, Jay. Comorbidity is if you get two things at the same time, for example. So if you were to get flu and COVID at the same time, then your prognosis, your future health and welfare is severely, severely, severely impacted. Last year, I had my flu jab, the first time I've ever had it, because I looked at the stats for the comorbidity of flu and COVID, and it was 99 point something % chance you would die if you got them both at the same time. So again, going back to these routine checks, going back to looking after ourselves, to look after others, even if you're not fussed about looking after you, look after those around you, society, your friends, your relations, your partners, whatever it is. Be respectful and look after them. I'm not preaching, I'm just saying this from the heart, because I've seen this affecting so many families, so many lives, so many organizations. And someone mentioned in the chat, stress the importance of these routine checks, your prostate cancer, bowel cancer, all those things. I'll talk about those again in a minute. One thing that we talk about when we're doing these courses, and one thing you can do, and this, yes, this is a bit of an advert for the college, is get guys to sign up for the course that I'll be running next year, but we'll come on to that later. But what we talk about is the second spring. This is something they talk about in Asia and Japan and China, where middle age, if you think about middle age, if we call middle age 50 for the sake of argument for this one, we're much more likely these days, statistically, to live into our 90s, possibly even hundreds. So when you reach that magical age of 50 or middle age, whatever you want it to be, you're probably only about halfway through your life, probably, statistically. So you've got a jolly long way to go. So why wouldn't you want to empower yourself, learn what to do, how to support yourself, how to support those around you, so that the rest of your life, the other half of your life, can be your second spring, that rebirth, that re-beginning, starting new things, doing other things, the things you're doing already, bigger, brighter and better. To me, it's kind of logic, but we're guys and logic sometimes passes by. Jay, we're going to have to wind our chat up in a moment. Have you got, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, I should have warned you about this, but have you got kind of a take-home message for us all? Something you leave us with this morning from the value of your knowledge and experience?
So here's one that I would go to. How can you be a better version of yourself? Because you're in control of that. I know I'm a better version of myself now because of everything that I've experienced. I'm a better brother, I'm a better son, better cousin, and better colleague, because I'm a lot more aware. And I think I've seen a lot in the chat about self-awareness. If no one else can do that, you can, about yourself. Be aware of those things that you probably would have turned a blind eye to. Understand them better, because when people then look at you and think, don't know how to help you, the one thing that you'll be able to say is, but this is who I am, and this is what this is doing to me. And like many people have alluded to in the chat, who we are in society and in our personal lives is who we aim to be all of the time. And when we're no longer able to do that, we feel a certain sense of violation, if you like. And I know that I've had a relationship breakdown in my life where I just didn't talk about myself enough. And actually subsequent interactions I've had with people where I just exposed just a little bit of some of my vulnerabilities, people understand how best to support me. And boy, when you feel supported, there's no better feeling. It's worth exposing that side of you, because someone else might just add just that little bit of value to your life, and you become a better version of yourself. You're nicer being around as well.
That's brilliant. And also, you add value to other people's lives. There's so much strength in showing your vulnerability and sharing. People think it's a sign of weakness. It's exactly the opposite. Only strong people have the self-esteem to share what they share and add value to other people's lives. Thank you so much for that, Jay. I kind of apologize for putting you on the spot, but you did such a good job, I don't need to. So we're just going to wind up now for the last few minutes. So I'm just going to leave you with a few thoughts, and Andrea's going to talk to us about some of the things the college is doing, and then we'll open up to Q&A. So just to share the slides again. One moment, getting my screens organized. So just to conclude our chat this morning, our meeting this morning. So if you want to, it's kind of all about well-being, and well-being covers so many different areas. And we've talked about already, Jay talked about physical well-being, emotional well-being, psychological well-being. Sexual well-being is something that's really important, and they're all inextricably linked. If one of the bits is out of kilter, out of balance, it will probably affect all or some of the others. There are some common themes that we can do ourselves and we can encourage those around us to do. Our BMI, there's some bad talk about BMI, quite justifiably, but body mass index, I can tell when I put on a bit of weight because my belt has suddenly shrunk on my trousers. So I know when I need to do something about that. And it's common sense, and it's something that I can do relatively easy, and I commend that to people. Alcohol, smoking, and what they call self-medication, I'll leave that to your own interpretation. They're things we can control, and they affect all areas of our life. I was shocked to read a paper last year about there's thousands of young men in their late 20s and early 30s who have erectile dysfunction due to the fact that they smoke so much. I was surprised by that. Fitness and exercise, there's been a lot of talk about that in the chat, a mix of aerobic and resistance exercise. The NHS recommends a minimum of 150 minutes a week. That's only about 20-25 minutes a day. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to do it every day. You can do some more one day and less another. So I'd strongly recommend that you do that for everything, your fitness and your mental well-being as well. A good diet, we are what we eat, we've all heard that, and a Mediterranean diet, however you interpret that, omega-3 oils, oily fish, lots of vegetables, onion family is really good, and things like that. Do your routine checks. When you're offered, do it. And if there's anything that you're worried about, please do something about it. Don't leave it, because it may go away, but it might not. And if it doesn't, then it's bad news. Take measures to control your stress and build your resilience. We haven't got time to go into those now, but during the full day course that I'm doing next year, we will talk about that in some detail. Exercise your mind. The more you exercise your mind, the more you retain your mental acuity, the sharpness of mind. So I commend this to you. Your mission, should you accept it, is actively to encourage men to get empowered for themselves, whether it's you or a man around you in some way. If we take control, like Jay says, become self-aware, take control, and actually do something about it, it can only be good for us, and it can only be good for everybody around us. And that's regardless of who we are, whatever we are, or anything else in life. So just a final from me before I hand briefly back to Andrea. We produce a quarterly, free quarterly e-magazine called Midlife Matters. It has stuff in there about female and male midlife, and it has stuff about midlife for everyone. If you fancy signing up for it, it pops in your inbox. You can delete it. You can even read it if you want to. Just pop me an email. We have to have an email because of GDPR and all the other joys and delights, but please feel free to do that. If you don't jot this down now, I'm sure you can get my email address from Andrea or some other way, so don't worry about that. Link on LinkedIn or something. So,
yeah, thank you, Roger and G. That was fantastic, and I can't believe how many questions and tips and shared experiences we've had in the chat box. It's been fantastic. It's just been message after message. So thank you everyone for sharing your experiences, and again to you as well, G, for sharing yours. We've had so many questions, and we will get to Q&A in a second. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the box, and then we'll get to them in a moment. But as mentioned a few times in the webinar, obviously Roger does a couple of courses around male midlife and so on. But this course is a pretty condensed version of what to expect in Roger's course that he's running next year, Mastering Male Midlife, which is a full day session for you or a man in your life. So Roger, what is to be expected? Can you tell the audience?
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, absolutely. For you or a man in your life. Online, it's so much easier. We can have anyone attend. It's great. We've had a lot of women coming along these, so you don't have to be male to come on it. You can be whoever you want. So what can we expect? Well, we talked a little bit earlier about what and when is midlife, but we'll go more into detail of the potential, I stress, potential experiences that men may go through at midlife. We stress even more the importance of well-being, the routine checks. We talk about diet. We talk about supplements and things like that. We talk about those recurring themes that we just looked at. And we stress the importance of looking after ourselves, ranging from nutrition through exercise to the importance of keeping our mind active, which is important for so many things. I did consultancy work in care homes for about 5 years. and the residents, the service users who kept their minds active had a very different life from those who didn't. I'll just put it like that. I'll leave that to your imagination. During the course, we'll talk about stress and resilience, and we'll look at ways that we can mitigate and overcome our stress and how we can build our resilience. And that's important for all of us. And most importantly, how we can turn those negative feelings, those negative thoughts, and create a positive future, set and achieve positive future goals for ourselves. We'll learn how our mind works and how we can do that most effectively and turn it into our second spring, as I talked about earlier.
Brilliant, thank you. And of course, here are the dates for next year. If you are interested in this course, these are the dates that we're running in 2022. Please do feel free to contact me, give me an email, it's on the screen there, or you can visit our website. It's a pretty long website there, but it's just to let you know, if you do access civilservicecollege.co.uk, it's under the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion category. There's a few people, Roger, that are asking for that email address, again, just for the magazine. If you can just pop that in the chat box, that would be brilliant.
Oh yeah, even better.
Yeah, it's on the screen now. If you just
I'll pop it in the chat box.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and Q&A, Roger, if we just move on, there's been a few questions that have come through, and I know we are getting close to the end of the session, but I've just wrote a few down that did pop up. So someone, and I'm sorry I didn't get your name, should we be talking to younger men so they can be prepared for these dangers and know that they may experience them naturally to help with recognizing what's happening?
Yes.
Yes, that is the answer.
It is. I'm sorry.
What should we be doing to talking to younger men? How could, whether it's sons, colleagues, and so on?
Sorry to be a little bit flippant, but it is basically the answer. And not only younger men. Let's again, all for all. Let's talk to all young people about what might happen to men and women as they go through life. Because the more I understand about what's going on with the women around me, we all have, almost, I guess all of us have women in our lives, colleagues, aunties, uncles, sisters, partners, whatever, friends, relations, and so on. So for me, it's really important to understand what's going on. And we had a young guy, he was in his late 20s, come on our Menopause Demystified course, because he wanted to learn what was going on when his mother went through this and went through a lot of problems, so that he could support his other half when she went through it. Now, isn't that good? So the more we can do this, so yes, talk to young people, demystify it, tell them, don't scare them. We're not out to scare people. It's just be aware of what might happen. And then if you spot something happening, do something about it. It's okay to feel not okay and do something about it, whether it's physical or mental or whatever.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. A couple more questions here. How can we facilitate and encourage healthy conversations about mental health with our male colleagues?
I think the thing to do is to normalize the conversation. My colleague Katie and I did a session with about 150 people in a big room when one could meet 150 people in a big room a long time ago, probably 2 years ago. And we started talking about the things that women and men might encounter as they go through life. So we started talking about periods and erectile dysfunction and vaginal atrophy and things like that. And you could see the women were kind of squirming in their seats, and the guys were sliding down in their seats and quickly finding the papers on their desk and hiding behind them and pretending it didn't happen. As we used the right terminology, as we talked about it, matter of fact, not casually, but speaking about facts, everyone loosened up and it became okay. It's okay to talk about it. If I talk about it, it's okay. I'm inviting you to talk about it as well. It's like the manager who says, my door's always open. You can share all your problems, but they don't ever talk about their problems. It's like, you think I'm going to share my problems with you? You're probably scribbling them down so that you can use them in my annual appraisal next year. No, if we start to share, it encourages others to share. And as I said earlier, huge thanks and respect to Jay for being so strong to share his experiences with us this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that, and I'll touch on the thanks later on, because I've learned so much as well, actually, guys. It's been really thought-provoking, and I've loved hearing from Jay's experiences. Another question here, where am I? Is the natural decline in testosterone a big factor to men's mental health? If so, why aren't men offered TRT like women with HRT?
The short answer is no. So what happens with male hormones? So testosterone, women have testosterone as well. They just have about 10% of the level that men have. And the decline in testosterone can affect women as well. And in fact, a dominance of testosterone can affect women after the menopause. Now to answer the question. Sorry about that. So testosterone peaks in our teens and our early 20s, and it stays at a high until late 20s, early 30s. Then it starts to decline about 1% per year throughout the rest of our life. There's a suggestion that it might decline slightly faster when we get up into our 80s and 90s, but the data aren't really available for that sufficiently. So this is not like a woman going through the menopause where the hormones go all over the place and then kind of crash out. This is a very gentle decline for men and for women. There is no magic figure. When you get to 47.938%, something's going to happen. There's nothing to do with that. So this decline can affect some people. It may not affect other people at all. It can affect some people slightly. It can affect some people more profoundly. TRT, or testosterone replacement therapy, is popular in the States. One could postulate why that might be. It's not very popular here. It is something that's used for clinical issues where men have, more of a medical, if I can put it like that, issue. But there are lots of things we can do. The most dominant issue around such things is erectile dysfunction. And now, thank goodness, we're seeing advertisements in men's lavatories. We're seeing them on TV. We're seeing them on billboards and in the newspaper. And I strongly commend, if it's something that someone around you or someone around you is being affected by, seek help. It's there. And if you want to, you can get your prescription for sildenafil, which is the generic form of Viagra. You could also get Viagra on the internet. But if you do that, only go to a reputable UK source, because otherwise you do not know what you're buying, and you'll be buying from an unregulated source. And of course, you need to make sure you answer the questionnaire honestly about your health and welfare, because it's something that it's a medicine. It does affect your body, and it was developed originally. The effect on erectile dysfunction was only found by accident. It was developed for cardiovascular issues, and it didn't work for that. But its secondary use became the most popular thing for Pfizer over the years. So do please answer the questions, and do please get it from an absolutely reputable source. And if it's something that's affecting you, do please do something about it.
Thank you so much, Roger. And I think, I'm quite conscious about the timing. So, Roger, if you don't mind just sharing the slides again for 1 second, if you've got them ready. If not, don't worry.
I have indeed. Just bear with me.
Fantastic. Thank you. It's just about next steps and what's coming up. Yeah, if we just go to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you so much. So just before I just move on to say thank you, just to let you know that our next webinar is coming up on the 1st of December, which is Facing Disability Head On, How Do You Approach Disability? With our trainer Ruben Carroll. If you are interested in this website, please do go on civilservicecollege.org.uk and sign up for that. It's completely free. And if we just move on to the next slide, you might need to double click on this one, Roger. Fantastic. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course this will be shared on YouTube as well, so you can share the recording with your colleagues, friends, and so on. But please do keep up to date with what we are doing at cscollege.org. The social handle is on there on screen for you. I just want to say a massive thank you, Roger and Jay. Jay, thank you so much for being open and honest. It was fantastic to hear your experiences, and I've seen so many great comments in there that have felt the same as you. And Roger, thank you so much for sparing the time today to deliver your content, and we look forward to having you next year to deliver the full day course. We hope, I can already see we've had some questions about next year's courses, which is great, but thank you for sparing the time and sharing all of that fantastic information and tips with us, Roger. It's been great to have you both here, and I look forward to seeing you both very soon.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and a huge thank you to Jay for joining us this morning and sparing so much of your valuable time when you've got so many important things to be doing. I know, like all of us, you share a passion for this, and we really want to get things going. Thank you so much, Jay, and thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, and of course our audience as well, who have been really open and sharing out their, experiences and comments as well. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you
all, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
See you
soon.
Too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.